Chapter 6. A Mysterious Light. Louise hurried across the cave and peered into the hole which Jean had dug. It was fairly wide and rather deep. At the bottom could be seen a worn buckskin pouch. Gently, Jean scooped up the ancient bag, which was tied round and round at the top with a leather thong. "I wonder what's inside," she said excitedly, laying the pouch on the ground. Carefully, she opened it. "Feathers!" chorused the sisters. As Jean lifted out the whole piece, they saw that the feathers were part of an ornate Indian headdress. "It's beautiful," Louise observed. The headband was made from hundreds of black and orange flicker feathers. Below them was a circle of trimming, which looked like ermine. "That's right nice," Mr. Strong commented admiringly. "Jean, you've made a real find." "What kind of animal did this fur come from?" Jean asked, pleased at his praise. "Winter weasels," the rancher replied, then explained he meant that in winter, weasels take on this white coloring, and the tips of their tails become black. "Then we call them ermines. Winter's the season when the fur and skins are best." Jean set the headdress on her hair and began to dance around with stately steps. "Do I look like an Indian princess?" she asked, grinning. "Not with that undignified smile," her sister teased. Mr. Strong looked closely at the headdress and remarked that the ancient Indians of California had also used unusually beautiful ceremonial headdresses made of birds' feathers. "There may be some connection between the Indians who lived there and the tribes around here," he said thoughtfully. "And even a connection with the old Polynesians that lived in the Hawaiian Islands," Louise said. "In a museum in Honolulu, Jean and I saw a whole cape and warrior's headpiece made of feathers. Do you suppose ancient Polynesian explorers came all the way to this country?" Mr. Strong shrugged. "Our historians and archaeologists still have a great deal to learn about the migrations of various peoples on this earth." Louise had picked up the trowel and now decided to try her luck. "Maybe I can make a discovery here too." She dug around the edges of the hole and scooped out a good-sized pile of dirt without finding anything. At last, however, she was rewarded and held up a pair of deerskin moccasins. Louise pulled off her boots and tried to put them on. They were much too small. She said in mock disgust. "White girl have big feet. Indian man have dainty feet." The others burst out laughing. Jean carefully folded up her prize headdress, put it back into the buckskin pouch, and placed this in her saddlebag. Louise tucked the moccasins into hers. "I suppose we should give these pieces to a museum," Louise remarked. "Yes, you really should," Mr. Strong agreed. "Any ancient, rare find should be put into a safe, permanent exhibit under glass, away from the air. Then people can enjoy it without fear of its being damaged." By this time, the roaring gale had greatly diminished, and the snowstorm had ceased. Mr. Strong and the Danas led their horses from the cave and climbed into the saddles. Suddenly they heard a loud whinny. It was not from one of their mounts. "Somebody else is in this canyon!" Jean cried out. At that very moment, Louise, who was in the lead, saw two men on horseback emerge from an undercut cliff some distance beyond. One, whose face she could not see, rode off quickly. The other was having trouble with his horse, which was dancing around as if it did not want to go forward. The rider was Ben Hopley. Quickly, Louise relayed this information to her companions, and the three urged their horses into a gallop. The riders ahead had evidently spotted them and did the same. There was a sharp turn in the canyon, and within a few seconds the men were out of sight. When Mr. Strong and the girls reached the turn, the fugitives had disappeared. The pursuers looked up each of the canyon walls. They noted that the walls were not steep and a horse could have negotiated them without danger. But there was no sign of the horses or the men. "Is there a cave nearby where they could be hiding?" Louise asked, seeing prints ahead. "Not that I know of," Mr. Strong answered. The rancher looked worried, nevertheless. He and the Danas continued on. The canyon floor widened, with sagebrush and a variety of native ground cover herbage, including dry fillery, growing profusely on it. This acted as a cushion for the horses' feet, so the three riders continued to move ahead at full speed. The canyon ended abruptly. Beyond stretched an open expanse, but Hopley and his pal were not in sight. "Where could those men have gone?" Jean asked in disgust. "It beats me," said Mr. Strong. "But one thing I'm sure of, Hopley and Simpson are not new to this area, even though they said they're from New York. A person unfamiliar with this territory couldn't possibly have disappeared this easily." "We haven't seen any more horseshoe prints," said Louise, looking over the ground carefully. Mr. Strong pointed to a stream. It appeared to be slightly muddy, as if recently disturbed by a moving object. "We lost the trail of those riders because they took their horses through the water," he said. "Well, I'm certain we're in no danger," Mr. Strong added. "Those men are after something, but I don't think they'll risk coming out in the open to harm us in order to accomplish it." Jean asked him if the route the rancher was taking led directly to Lost Lake. "That depends on which end of the lake you want to hit," he replied. "The water that remains, or the far side where the mountain tumbled into it." The young sleuth laughed. "I thought I might have a clue to which way Hopley and Simpson went," she said. "But they could have taken either way toward Lost Lake, so I think we should go to the section you think the witch lives in." "I'm not sure of that myself," the rancher said. "But according to hearsay, her place is not far from the water." Louise had been gazing around as an idea came to her. Now she remarked, "My guess is that Hopley and Simpson aren't sure where the witch is either. When they saw us, they probably figured we know, and they've doubled back so they can follow us." "Well," said Mr. Strong, "you're a better detective than I am. I hadn't thought of that. We'd better be mighty careful," he warned. "You girls ride ahead. I'll bring up the rear and keep turning around to see if I can catch a glimpse of 'em." The riders went on, and whenever Mr. Strong wanted to change directions, he called out instructions to Louise, who was leading the way. By 4 o'clock, the group was hungry again and stopped to rest and eat supper. Mr. Strong informed the Danas he was trying to reach a deserted cabin some miles ahead. "We'll spend the night there," he said. "I'd prefer that you girls be under cover, if possible." He told them that he had discovered the cabin while he was on a hunting trip some time ago. "It's very old. Dates back to around 1880, but it has stood up remarkably well. It's quite crude, of course, built of cottonwood, cedar, and piñon logs. The roof is made of dirt and willow and cedar bark. The floor's dirt, too," he added. "Do you girls mind sleeping on the ground?" "We've done it many times when camping out," Jean assured him. "Good. I thought maybe you girls were only used to fancy hotels and stuff like that." The rancher laughed. "This log cabin I'm taking you to doesn't have any windows, just chinks between the logs for air and light. I guess for safety, too." "It must be kind of chilly in the wintertime," Louise remarked. "Oh, there's a great big fireplace," Mr. Strong told her. "A good roaring fire in it will take care of us." The riders started off once more. Mr. Strong said that whenever the terrain made it feasible for the horses to canter, they should be urged to do this. "The sun goes down all of a sudden in these mountains," he explained. "It might be very difficult to find the cabin if we don't get there before dark." Just then, the group came to a dead-end canyon. Mr. Strong berated himself for making the wrong turn. He directed that they pull around and go back to where there was a branching trail which led through a gorge. Louise and Jean knew from the rancher's silence the past 15 minutes that he was concerned about their reaching the cabin with its protection from wild animals before dark. After a while, however, he announced cheerily, "We're on the rat trail. The cabin's only about a mile away." Jean was now in the lead, and it was not long before she spotted the rustic building a short distance away. At the same moment, the sun sank below the horizon. Jean gave a start, then exclaimed, "Someone's in the cabin! I can see light coming through the chinks!" Louise saw the light too and said worriedly, "The horse thieves! Hopley and Simpson!" End of chapter 6.